Hello again, it's Rennie Borg from Champions Everywhere. So we're back for another one in this ongoing series that we have been doing for the last few days and weeks about how to review your training, how to use or to get some useful numbers that reflect something real that actually happens to you during your training, and how you can use it to both make more intelligent decisions when you plan and when you actually execute the training. So over the course of these last few videos, we have been looking at this dummy training plan that you can see in the background. So I do suggest, if you are watching this video as the first one, go back to the one I published yesterday about stress. I'll put a link, if I can, in the description of this video, because stress and understanding how we try and measure that to show you what we want to show you in this video, which is freshness and fatigue and fitness, and the whole equation around that. You need to understand stress first, and you need to buy into personally that stress is actually a figure that means something, and it's not just a random number on a board that, it could really be anything. Because then obviously all the conclusions that we draw are not going to mean anything real, and all of the, your trust in trying to make decisions based on the numbers will not be justified, because you will see that on a day where you're tired, you feel really fresh. And so you're constantly going to see that actually reality and the theory that we use to try and plan what will reality probably be like, a few weeks down the line, a few days down the line, they won't match very often, and if you have a model like that, then obviously it needs to be revisited, because it's useless. So with those words, go back and watch the stress video. If you have watched that already, I will just recap very quickly that it is a number that reflects how tough today's workout is compared to an all-out 1 hour effort that you could make. So over time, we can take all of the planned stress calculations for all the workouts that we have, and we can put them into something that's called performance management table. Now, as I was saying in yesterday's video, I'd like a better name than that. I just kind of clung to that slightly technical term because it's based on something called a PMC, or a performance management chart, that you would know if you've used the online portal Training Peaks. And that basically shows you how is your fitness at the moment, how is your fatigue, and how tired should you be as a result of the balance between your fitness and the fatigue that you're putting on yourself. Now, in Training Peaks, they use a lot of 3-letter acronyms, and so while I've taken the calculations to create what you should see here, I've actually changed the names. And it was not to be disrespectful to Training Peaks, but it's because what they call fitness is listed as something that's called a CTL, chronic training load, and then what they call fatigue is listed as ATL, which means acute training load. Really, what they are is it's the average of the stress that you've inflicted day by day for the last 6 weeks. So that's what they call the chronic training load, because it's been happening chronically, it's been happening regularly. And the acute training load is the average of the last 7 days, so the last 1 week that you have. And that's acute because it's right now, we're still feeling the effects of that. But I feel when you have a conversation about CTL minus ATL gives you blah blah blah, I think it's called TSB actually, what comes out of that little equation in Training Peaks is called the training stress balance. Okay, so we can all understand that training stress balance. That sounds like something we need to understand, but the formula gets very technical. Then ATL minus CTL, or CTL minus ITL, or whatever, it's confusing. So we have substituted that in our own training program for normal everyday words. So it's your fitness minus your fatigue that gives you what we have termed freshness. That gives you 3 nice words with an F as well: fitness, fatigue, freshness. But it's the same thing as the CTL minus the ATL equals the TSB if you are a user of Training Peaks. We show it in a table like this for the athletes that we coach, and I'll try and zoom in if you can't see it properly here early in the video. Then hopefully as I get in, it'll become a little bit clearer. But basically you can see the dates here that correspond to the dates in the training plan. So I can, for instance, see that on the 17th of January, I was meant to do 30 minutes at easy effort, and that was a stress score of 28. That's a 28 for me, because that's based on what is my current ability over 1 hour. What's my max performance over 1 hour? So for you, this would be different, right? You would have a different stress score, and that's one of the important things in making this individual. Like if you were an elite Kenyan athlete, this would be much, much less than 28, because it'd be probably almost no stress at all. But for me right now, there's a little bit of stress there because I'm just coming back to fitness. So you can see that was, the date here was the 17th of January. So if I look at the 17th of January, the stress is recorded for that day. I'll zoom in here a little bit. Let's bring our date back here. So you can see this day is 28 stress, the next day was 46. Then my fitness is measured in the next column, and that's just the average of the last 6 weeks of stress. And so you can see that on the 17th, if you took the average of the last 6 weeks of training that I've done, my average stress score was 13. So that means the average stress I was subjecting myself to on a daily basis was a good bit lower than the 28 that I subjected myself to on this day. Then if we look at the average, before we go to, so you can see, okay, that workout looks like it's a good bit heavier than the average. But what we compare when we look at freshness, which is how should I be feeling on this day and what sort of stimulus am I getting. So if there is a very red number, as you can see here further down, it means I'm starting to get tired, and the workouts I'm starting to do will create quite a stimulus on my system. But obviously if it gets too red, it'll probably be what we call overreaching, and I'm more likely to get injured or overtrained. If it's always green, I'll always be fresh. But that's not necessarily a good thing, because if we're trying to train and get better, we can't always be fresh. We need to get a little bit tired to actually get better. So you can see here in the column next to fitness, we have what we call fatigue, which is the average of the last week. So you can see the average of the last week was 13 as well. So that means freshness is just 0 at this stage, because there is very little difference between what I've been doing the last 7 days and what I've been doing the last 6 weeks. As we get further down the program here, you can see, for example, the 25th here we have a workout of 46, and my average from the last 6 weeks has now increased to 16, but the average of the last 1 week has increased more than that, so it's now up to 25. So that means suddenly in the last week I am putting much more stress on my body than I've been doing in the longer period before, and that then is reflected that my freshness is expected to go down. So that means if I go out and run on a day where I see a -9 or then all this red, I can't expect to be performing 100%, because there should be some tiredness here. And that's what we tell our athletes, that as you see this, don't panic if you're not quite where you need to be. But eventually what you want to see is some days where it's green, because if it's just red, then eventually you'll get worn down. Right? There needs to be some oasis in the desert. And also, let's say I had a race here on the 18th of February. Then I really want to see green, because when you're racing, if it's an important race, you want to be fresh. So we use this training planning to make sure, as far as we can with these numbers, that on the day that it matters, our athlete is fresh and able to perform. You don't go racing on a day maybe with -11 on your score, because it's very likely you will be fatigued and not performing at your best. And that's what we try to, we have a little taxonomy here so that people reading this who are part of our coaching or our coached athlete group, that they can read it and remind themselves. And then we have a little box here where we give due credit to Training Peaks. I actually learned how to do these formulas from Jim Vance's book, Run with Power. So it's in the public domain, and you could do it yourself if you're a bit of an Excel whiz. So now I think that's the basics of it. It's easy enough to use. Okay, red days you'll be tired and you need some red days. Green days you'll be fresh, but you also you can't have too many green days, because then you'll never be improving. On the other hand, why should we buy into this whole idea that fatigue is reflected as a 1 week average and that fitness is your 6 week average? This is not something people just pull out of thin air. If you read books like, for instance, Jan Albrecht's The Science of Winning, which is a swimming book, but it's a brilliant physiology book, you can see there that most of the adaptations that happen from training happen in a 6 week period, and actually most of it in the first 2 weeks. That's called the period of fast adaptation. And then the next 4 weeks are called stabilization. That means that after the first 2 weeks of stimulus, we usually stabilize the gains of those 2 weeks, and then we're ready to progress to another level, another 6-week block where we try to push it to another level again. Some things like the creation of new blood cells, which is very important as a fitness gain factor, happens in about 12 weeks. That's 2 6-week blocks. That means if I train at a certain level of stress for 6 weeks, that does reflect my fitness, because that's actually what my body can tolerate consistently. It's not just what my body tolerated yesterday and the day before. It's something that's been tolerated for a significant period, and we can realistically say that the actual physiological adaptations inside the body from that stress should now be beginning to take effect. So that means they're in you. So that means if I'm taking a training load of 45 on average, or 100 for 6 weeks, it's very realistic then that to push onwards, might need now a workout that's over 100 to push me to the next level. And that wouldn't break me because it's just a little bit further. But if I put in 200, well, it's way beyond what I have been tolerating and what my body's been tolerating on average for the last 6 weeks. So we can say, if you average of the day itself, or the average of the last 7 weeks, because the last 7 weeks, generally, most workouts, you can feel the strain of them for 24, 48, 72, even 96 hours or more if it's racing after. So basically, what you've done in the last week, you probably haven't gotten the benefit of those workouts yet, but you might be feeling the strain and the tiredness from those workouts. So that's what we are doing with the assumption that if we look at the average of the last 7 days, that's the fatigue on the body. Now, if you have a tool like Training Peaks, you get a very nice chart that beautifully shows you all this, and in the paid version. So that's obviously something you can consider if you want that. If not, you can try and create something like this yourself. Of course, you can sign up for a coaching plan with us, and we will provide you, along with the training plan itself here, we will provide you with a performance management chart and our little ebook, which is called Stress, Fitness, Fatigue, and Freshness, and it explains how to use all this and how to interpret it. How far down we have planned your weeks, because we don't plan too far in the future because we don't believe in that. I think when you give someone a 16-week schedule up front, you don't really leave any time for course correcting, and there's always a need for course correcting in training plans. It never pans out exactly like you thought on day 1, on day 72. There's just no way. So that's kind of the brief overview of how you can use the stress metric to calculate fitness, fatigue, and then get your freshness, and how you can use that to plan the days where you expect to be tired and the days where you want to be fresh, and then how you can use that to interpret, why did I do like I did on that day. So I think with that, we will cut this topic short, and hopefully we can deep dive into some of it, or you can comment on this video and on Facebook, and we can discuss it more. But that's all for me, so thanks for listening, and for more information, as always, you go to www.championseverywhere.com.